Dark from Chicago, Illinois, and the Fairmont something or other hotel. We are in the Ambassador Room, which took us a long time to find, but we're very happy to be here. So I am Christine Becker, and Michael Kackman, my usual co-host, is in Germany right now. He's giving a talk or something like that. So he's asleep right now. Probably not on the live stream, I wouldn't think. So we've got a voice you are familiar with, Stephanie Brown, who is our co-host.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Brown.
And so she's going to be filling in for Michael. And then we've got 3 guests for you. And we're just going to,
We're gonna
vibe with it. Yeah, we've got some folks in the audience here. If any of you have questions, we do, first of all, if anyone's out there, but secondly, if anyone is out there and you have questions, we have someone monitoring the YouTube feed, so you can pop questions in the chat or, swears or whatever you want to, insults, whatever you want to do. And we have someone monitoring that situation. So let us know if anything happens exciting on the YouTube. But we're just going to go ahead and start then with our first guest. And we have here at the end of the table, and I want to make sure I pronounce your name correctly. So please say your name.
My name is Christina Bruning, but you can say Christina and Bruning or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, you had the nice like
the German.
Yes, yeah. So she is a media studies PhD student in the radio, television, film department at University of Texas at Austin, and graduate student organization representative on the SCMS board. And so we're going to talk. I could read her bio, but we're just going to talk about it. So let's jump right into it. So first of all, one reason we really wanted to have you on was to talk about the SCMS board and being, first of all, just a member of the board and what it's like to be in those meetings. And then secondly, specifically representing graduate students and why the kind of importance of graduate students having a voice on that body. So what's the experience been like?
Yeah, it's been a great experience. I had no concept of what it would be like going into this.
Really?
And I mean, we've been in the room together.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm not a board member.
True. No, it's an interesting concept because you go to a hotel together and spend 2 days there, or 4 with the travel days, but you spend 2 days locked in a room essentially talking about things. Which, I hadn't done anything like this ever before. I think it's super important that grad students have a voice in that room. I felt like, I could share my thoughts and feelings in that room, and I think we should continue to do that so that people know what's going on our end of things.
Yeah.
I highly recommend to everyone who's considering a career in the academy or, wants to continue working in a university context to try and do something like that if they can, because it's just, amazing insight into how things actually work and the politics, how things get decided.
Yeah,
like that.
That's the thing. I learned so much about why so many things happen or don't happen, both at the conference, what SCMS does. The other thing that was really eye-opening for me is because we, especially someone like me, I've been at my institution for 24 years, and it's its own unique little thing. And so I knew how everything works in my world. There's a lot of other, worlds out there. And so being in that room and having, especially what's really important, a diverse body that's going to give you different types of institutions, different types of scholars, different areas of interest. Because that was, to me, I would think about like, oh, why don't we do it this way? And like, that would work here, but not there. And that's where, again, I think, precarious labor on there, graduate student representatives, all of those voices are really important. And that's why I found it the most gratifying part was just, I learned so much about how things work that I really found it gratifying. I'm curious because if you didn't know what to expect, what made you want to run for that position?
That's a great question. I think what made me want to do this, mostly the curiosity. I wanted to see what actually happens and how the process works. I also wanted to, change the world, as we all do, I think, when we're young. And for me, something that's been really exciting about being a part of the board is getting to know the people on the board and people, from a grad student perspective. Of course, all the people who are going to be in the room are people you read in class, and then you get to meet them, and it's really cool to see that you're all real people, and that's kind of exciting, and to just be a part of that. Yeah, again, highly recommend if you can do something like that. It will make you understand things on a different level. Yeah.
You know, I think the other thing that was eye-opening for me was just how much everyone cares, and that maybe sounds like almost like a backhanded observation. Like I wasn't expecting to show up and like no one cares, but the sincerity and care for the organization, for everyone in it, that was another thing. I feel like I'm doing a PSA or like an ad. I'm not trying to do an ad here, but that like the you know, everyone, you know, kind of cares in a way that, again, it feels weird to say it as if I didn't expect that. I don't mean that, but just the sincerity with which everyone operates to me was really impressive and gratifying. It makes being a member, then, you know, when you go back off the board and being a member, it makes you really kind of take heart that everything is, there's at least people trying to do things to make things better.
Yeah, there's actually, you know, so much thought going into every little single thing that happens or doesn't happen, and there's a reason why. Yeah,
I think when you're outside and you just hear, I mean, there's so much of like, even I'm like Severance pilled because I've been watching Severance so much. But I mean, like the board is like such a thing that it becomes a joke on so many shows. When you're like outside of any sort of like organizing body, it's so easy to be like, why are they making these decisions? Like, why is this happening? Like, this is ridiculous. It feels like a little bit of a black box. So it must be really nice and interesting, and like give you just such an interesting perspective to be able to actually see what is going on, and that is actually like deliberations and not just people making random decisions.
Get to see how the sausage is made.
Now I totally want an SCMS version of Severance. You know, like I feel like cast.
Let's make it.
Yeah, let's do it. Because we, you know, when I was on the board, and this was always a conversation of making videos about how things work in SCMS. It takes. This is the one, and it's not even a flaw or anything like that. It's just real life. There's so many good ideas that come up on the board that no one ever really has that time to kind of follow through on. And that was the idea. We were going to do all these like video explainers about like how we pick, you know, a city, how we pick a particular hotel, why this, that, or the other, why is it difficult to have a hybrid conference with a organization the size of SCMS, and to do video explainers. And so I might even like volunteer to lead that committee, and then you haven't seen any video explainers, have you? So it just, these things, you know, that happens. It's difficult. People are busy. But now I want this. I want like a video explainer, you know, in Severance style, which is also like part of the bizarreness of Severance, like, because you don't want to live in Severance. Like no one wants this. And everyone's like, where's my Lumen t-shirt? I want to wear my Dado, you know, macro refined shirt. That, you know, whole notion of like fandom of wanting to live in these worlds, which are actually really demented. But anyways, we need to do a Severance.
Yes. Yes, let's do it. I would like to be on it.
Okay. All right. Well, I also want to talk about your the panel or the workshop. So the GSO has a workshop, and for those of you who are at the conference, this is Friday, 11 a.m. The title is Cruel Productivity 2.0: Imagining Alternatives. So tell us about this. How did this idea come about? What are you all going to talk about on Friday?
Yeah, so I'm super excited about this workshop, and we actually have Jamie here in the audience as well, who's one of our GSO co-chairs. Thank you, Jamie. We're doing this. We're doing this workshop together. This is the second iteration, kind of part 2 of Cruel Productivity Part 1 from last year, which the title is kind of a play on Lauren Berland's Cruel Optimism. And I was, this is a very long story. I was reading for my comms. I was reading, you know, that kind of stuff, Lauren Berland. I was reading Aaron Duffy's work on aspirational labor, all that stuff. And meanwhile, you know, a lot of things were going on in the world. A lot of stuff was going on for me financially. That was really hard. And I kept reading and thinking like, ugh, those poor workers that I'm reading about, and thinking about my dissertation topic, which is on actors and their working conditions, and reading all of this theoretical work, thinking about them, but then also thinking about my situation as a grad student and thinking like, oh, this is kind of, there's a lot that applies to our situation as well. And how can we use that theory that we engage in the classroom all the time and engage in our work in order to think about our own situations and try to make those better, rather than just reading things and then talking about it in theory as it relates to something outside of what we're actually living. So that was the first idea for that. And what happened in that first year was mostly people getting a chance to just unburden themselves and talk about their lives. So it was, kind of a nice community spirity situation where everyone just shared what was going on for them, the things that they feel like need to change. And that was how far we got in that first round, which was really productive in that sense. And so the 2.0 part of this is that this year in the part 2, we're hoping to actually brainstorm alternatives, right? Because part of what Berland is talking about is that people stick with what they're trying to do, even though it's not, it's an obstacle to their flourishing, because they can't imagine alternatives. So this is us, trying to think, okay, what could an alternative be, and what can we do to make things better for ourselves? So now that we have the GSO co-chairs, which is a new situation that we're going to talk about in a second, maybe. Now we have actually a team for the GSO. It's not just me as a GSO representative, but we have me, who is the liaison to the board, and we have 3 co-chairs who are chairing the GSO. And so as a team of 4, we can do so much more. And so the plan is to have a brainstorm session on Friday to talk about ways that we can foster community among the GSO members, ways that we can make communication better among GSO members, and ways that we can liaise with the board better.
Oh, that's great.
To change the world. We'll see.
It's impressive that you managed to go from venting to let's do this, put this into action.
We haven't,
I know that's true. It could just be
it.
venting again, because that tends to happen. But it's so hard to pivot from the because venting is so important too, because it's like just connecting with other people and being able to air, just get it out.
Yeah.
But the turning it into what can we actually do about it is such a hard part of that equation.
Fingers crossed we can do that on Friday.
Well, and then you mentioned the idea of the co-chairs. Was that an attempt to, because as I was talking about before, it's really tough. One person can volunteer to do something. It's really tough to actually do that. And so is co-chairs then a way to kind of spread that labor around a little bit?
Yeah, so this is built on emulating the structure of the PLO, which is organized exactly this way. They have 3 co-chairs and the PLO representative, who is a board member. And so now that we have that same structure, hopefully we can do just as much. I mean, the PLO is amazing.
Yes, that's, there's an irony that they're one of the most productive SCMS bodies.
Most overworked.
Yes.
Yeah. In that one.
Yeah, because they live that reality and know how crucial it is to do that work. So hopefully if we can even do, half of that would be amazing.
Right.
So that's the goal. But yeah, this has been a long time in the making, and Joe Roskis, who was the GSO rep before me, actually started the thinking process of this. So it takes years to make something happen.
Yeah, any organization takes a while to make change, but especially when you have committed people, then you can have something produced from it. We also want to plug your panel. So you're doing back to back. So you got your panel, your paper at 9 a.m. and then heading to the workshop. So your panel at 9 a.m. is called Of Dreamers and Screamers, Entry Level and Early Career Media Production Workers and the Cost of Cheap Labor. So you're delivering a paper titled Just Shut Up and Say Your Lines, Early Career Actors, Professional Conduct, and Agency is Privilege. So you want to offer us a tease about what that's at, and then any thoughts about, if this fits into a larger work, like this is part of your dissertation. What is this work about?
Yeah, it's pretty much what the title suggests. So shut up and say your lines doesn't really work, right? Because you have to say your lines, but you're also not supposed to make any stirs. So my paper is about the experiences of entry level or early career actors and their attempt to balance professionalism and the expectations around that on set, especially with also being able to advocate for themselves when they need to, and how that is a really hard thing to do, and the attempts of more established female actors in supporting them. So my dissertation research is based on ethnographic research in LA. So I've interviewed a lot of actors at different career stages, and I'm basically presenting a bunch of quotes.
I love that.
Of what people have told me.
As someone who also has done
Yeah.
papers that are a bunch of quotes, I'm
Yeah.
very excited to come here.
I'm running a book that's mainly a bunch of quotes. It's a TV history project, and the thing, the people I'm interviewing are they're just really smart and funny and witty, and like I can't say what they've said any better, so I'll quote them. So
That's how I feel too. Like throw out a quote and feel the feelings that are in it. I mean, hopefully people will feel it. I feel it. But
right.
Oh, yeah.
what happens.
The best is when they say something and you're like, oh, this is just the theory I just read, but you just said it like in,
Yeah.
like how it applies to your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's especially hard to, like, when you're interviewing them, you don't want to be like, oh my God, you just said
You said the
that right
thing I needed
there.
to say.
That is
Yeah.
so great. But when they deliver you something like that, it's like just a golden moment. And especially like when I have that experience where I'm writing it in my head then, because actually the paper I'm totally different project than the one I was just referring to, but the paper I'm delivering here was based on an interview with a director. There are moments where, you know, he'd say something in my head. I'm like, oh, that's perfect for, you know, the second main point. Like I'm writing it in my head. And I've not done prior to this, not too many projects based on interviews. And I just found it so fun. And, you know, it can be difficult with an interview where you're relying on people's own frame of reference and their memories and things like that. Like you always have to put that in context and all that. But I just found it's really enriching to take what someone says and try to make, you know, a larger point out of it. It's really a gratifying process, I found.
Yeah, the interviews are my favorite part of this by far, but it also, I feel a lot of pressure to do them justice.
Yeah.
You know, because at the end, everyone always says, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to read this. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, hopefully this gives you something in return
Yeah.
for telling me all of this.
Yeah. But I think it's saying, you know, back to my book project, I'm having that kind of experience. These people, it was just like the greatest experience of their lives when they were like 15, 16. It was these high school kids making a TV show. And so that, like having to deliver that, like something that lives up to their experience. But I feel like honored because they've like that I'm the one lucky enough to get to tell their story. It's, you know, and so it's a lot of pressure, but, you know, and same to then the folks you've interviewed, this is what we're good at, right? Because a lot of them can articulate what their experience was, but they can't always say what it adds up to, sort of like what Steph is saying, like what this means in a larger scope or what, you know, theoretically that points to. And that's why I feel like that's what I can bring to it. And so and I think the same for you, then that's what we're here for. That's what we're good for, doing that kind of work. So it's great that you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, same for you. Yeah, it's exciting, especially once you get to that point where you actually can tell them something to validate their feelings, because oftentimes they'll be like, oh, I don't know if I should share this, or this might sound weird, and then I can say no, it doesn't, because everyone has said the same thing in a way, so you're not the only one feeling that way. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. I had a
no, go ahead.
I had a random author, like woman author, find my dissertation just like from looking. She accidentally found it looking for something else from somebody who has the same name as me.
Really?
And then she sent me an email like, oh my God, like I read your dissertation and I'm not a comic, but like I've had this exact same experience of like being a woman like in a male dominated field, and like I feel really validated that like I'm not the only one experiencing this. So and I think that's like the best part about doing like ethnographic.
Yeah, especially like ordinary people might read it, right?
Yeah.
And so
it doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Wow.
Yeah, and you are doing something for someone too.
Yeah. Besides then your own work that you're presenting in your workshop, anything else you're looking forward to this weekend, this next 4 days?
So much. I've been away from UT for a while because I've been doing my research in LA. So, I mean, this doesn't help anyone else. I'm not plugging anything. I'm just saying I'm excited to see my friends and everyone I haven't seen in a while.
Yeah.
I am excited for the PLO roundtable that is happening on Saturday, I believe, which I think will be really cool too. Come to the GSO workshop. If you can, come to the GSO reception if anyone's listening. We'd love to see you there. The reception is tomorrow.
Yeah. we can plug that on our socials. We'll make sure that people know about that. And this is, it's an important time to gather in community and to, as you talked about with the GSO workshop and the evolution, to come up with practical ways to deal with things that we have to deal with, things that are on our plate. And so this is one of, hopefully going to be one of the things we can take away from this weekend is gathering community, coming up with ideas to all, whether it is therapy and coping with things or actual practical things that we can actually do. So I think that's really important. All right. Well, thank you so much for taking time out, especially like before the conference has even started. You're already sounding smart and all in gear. So we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Give you some applause. Our next guest back there, if we could get Matthew Payne up here. You're next up. I forgot to ask if were there any questions on the YouTube. Is anyone on the YouTube?
Or anyone in the room?
2 views.
2 views.
0 comments.
Okay. All right. We got 2 though. That's good. Excellent.
Well, I forgot to ask Christina if she was watching the studio or not.
I haven't yet. It's on purpose.
Okay.
We'll talk later.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Matthew Payne here, and partly I guess this is because Michael Kackman is in Germany, and we have to have at least 2 Notre Dame people on the panel at any given time, and so yeah, so we got Matthew Payne here, and let me give his bio. So, associate professor at Notre Dame, has taught a range of media studies and film TV production courses at the university level, and has also, speaking of liaisons with the industry, has conducted industry research for Warner Brothers. He's also a regional director for the Learning Games Initiative, a multi-institute research collective dedicated to archiving games and gaming ephemera. Let's see, he adores Miss Pac-Man and is irrationally terrified of Midwestern winters, but we should also, I'm irrationally, not irrationally, it's totally rational to be terrified of tornadoes. And tonight, both of us back home, we got texts from our university that there was tornado warning back in at Notre Dame. We think South Bend is fine, that the word from back home is it's fine. I'm seeing that there were some actual touchdowns of tornadoes further south of us. So, starting to say thoughts and prayers, and that's such an empty phrase anymore, but we're hoping for the best for everyone out there. But it's very strange to like come here for a conference and you're in your little bubble and you're like, hey, it's great seeing everybody, and oh my god, I just got a text that there's a tornado back home. So but yeah, so sorry to bring that up at the start of this.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, another reason we wanted you on here was because you have a book out, and so it's always exciting to have someone who just has a book out and then gets to come to SCMS. You'll get to see your book on display.
Get the picture next to the display.
The electric or
downstairs.
I don't actually know if it's on the carousel right now. But if it does appear, I will definitely take a selfie with it.
Yeah. So tell us about the book, and I'm also, because I've got a little bit of insight, we both took a writing workshop at the same time, so I know a little bit about what you had to go through for it. So tell us about the book, the process of writing it, how it feels. I know that sort of, it's always a bittersweet feeling. Always have written one, but at least that one time, a bittersweet feeling. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. The book is Eugene Jarvis, King of the Arcade. It's part of Bloomsbury Academic's Influential Game Designer series. So it's a series of books that looks at video game designers and tries to make the case that we should think about them as being obviously fairly integral to the game development process, but also trying to think through, like, are there authorship issues? Like, how do we think about game design as a style of production? And so I focused on Eugene Jarvis, who actually lives just north of here in the greater Chicagoland area. He's in his 70s, and he is still making video games. And what makes Eugene Jarvis really interesting, I think, is that he's only made arcade games. So he's only made coin-operated games. So whereas other game designers might float between consoles or personal computers or mobile devices, Jarvis has only made those big, those ostentatiously large video games. And he started in 1980 with Defender, ended up, makes Stargate, Robotron. Years later, he if anybody remembers playing Cruisin' USA, he's the Cruisin' USA guy. So he's made a ton of these really influential arcade games. And so what's really interesting about following him is that the arcade, of course, has changed dramatically over our lifetimes. Sort of having a golden era in the 70s and 80s, kind of disappearing from the American landscape, and then coming back in the form of a family entertainment center. So you think of like Dave and Buster's or Round One, those places that have mostly like redemption machines, but they might also have like bowling and like axe throwing and overpriced pizza and beer. And so Jarvis has continued to make video games specifically for public play spaces. He's an interesting person that's only operated in that space.
Yeah. How'd you, what were your starting point for that book? I mean, there's just so much fascinating information there. Like, where do you start with that?
Well, I started there because I was stuck with a different project.
Okay.
The other project is the Oregon Trail, which is a really fascinating cultural history that needs to be told. I hope I'm the one that tells it.
As a part of my childhood, I also hope you tell
it means for Gen Xers, for millennials, like it occupied a lot of our kind of, our first introduction to computers in the classroom. And it's like my experience with Oregon Trail. I don't know about other people's, but it was the 1985 version. But actually the first iteration of it was 1971.
Oh, wow.
And fun fact, through some of my archival digging, it was demoed at Bryant Junior High in Minneapolis in 1971, which is also the same year when Prince was in middle school at that middle school.
Really?
So Prince might have played the first version of the Oregon Trail. I don't know.
Oh, that's amazing.
He was in that school where they played it. So I love that game. I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is like thinking about games as education, right? Like, can games teach us stuff? So anyway, I've been wrestling with that project. I was like, oh, this is too much. And I was talking to Jennifer DeWinter and Carly Koceric, who both are the editors of Bloomsbury's influential game design series. And they're like, we're looking for ideas. And I'm like, oh, this other book idea is just too much. I want something that's a little bit more, something I can pick up and sort of think about more immediately. And, Eugene Jarvis is still making games, and he's sort of, we're both from South Bend, so he's sort of here in our backyard in Chicago. And I reached out to some of my contacts at the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, which is an amazing video, just game archive generally. And I was like, hey, do you know anybody who knows Eugene Jarvis? And just so happens that one of their collection specialists did put me into contact, and so that's where the project started.
Well, speaking, we were just talking about interviewing people. What was it like talking to him then, and what's he think about someone trying to summarize his life's work in an academic book?
Yeah, he's a really colorful character. He's sort of like a carnival barker, And you think about like the games that you make for an arcade space are always trying to interpolate, hail, yell at, kind of grab your attention. And so it makes sense on some level that the person who would make these games also has a bit of that showmanship and personality in him as well.
Yeah.
But he sat down for 2 very, very long interviews with me. So I have a chapter in the book that is a shorter version of what ended up being about 12 to 13 hours of interview. So
Wow.
there were 2 very long days. But the fuller version of that edited transcript I will be giving to the Strong as part of their oral history collection.
Great.
So it'll be there for other people if they need it.
Right.
But there's a shorter, a little, sort of pithier, more digestible version of it in the book.
Okay. Speaking about games and education, tell us about the Learning Games Initiative then. Like, what's the mission of that? And
Yeah, so
what does it do?
it's a constellation of game scholars, not just in the States, but all over the globe. It's housed primarily at the University of Arizona in Tucson. Judd McGill and Ken McAllister run the LGI. And it is really aimed at equipping educators with materials to help them teach. And so I should say it has two missions. One, they're an archive where they consider themselves to be gonzo collectors. So they they do not have the same kind of training that you might expect for other museum folks or even other kinds of more traditionally trained librarians. So they collect everything that has anything to do that might have to do with video games. So they have arcade machines. They have, I think they have like Mario branded fish sticks. Like they have everything. And I think they have over 50,000 pieces of ephemera, right? So
Wow.
it's part of an archive. But if you're an educator and you're interested about using particularly an older game platform in your class, you can reach out to them and they will send it to you. It's part of what LGI does is they equip educators with games and platforms to use them. And so the things in their collection are not precious. They're meant to be used.
Right.
And partly under the rationale that these things were never produced to really like possess and hold on to anything precious, but rather to be experienced. Yeah. And that's a lot of what motivates the LGI.
Yeah. And that's also important mission for any archive in general, like making this, as you say, then also like contributing your interview with something someone else can look at and learn from. Like that's great, great mission. What can one learn from video games? Like if you want to proselytize a little bit here about the educational value of video games, what would you say?
Well, I try to, I remind my students of this, is that I actually don't care about games that much. What I think games are useful, though, is that they bring forth human play. And I think play is something that we don't think about. We all do it, but we don't think about it intentionally enough.
Yeah.
And play gives us license to imagine the world as it might otherwise be. And I don't know about y'all, but like, I would like to imagine the world otherwise. And so play allows us, it gives us the freedom, it gives us license to make those leaps and to imagine and to maybe try something and then say, oh, I don't like that. Let's roll it again. Let's do it again. And so we play, I think we play when we play games, but we play when we are scribbling marginalia in a book that speaks to us. We play when we are recording a little YouTube video with our friends. We are playing. We're playing with each other when we sit down and we reconnect with family members that we haven't seen in a while. I play with my kids all the time, and it's a way that sort of, for me anyway, like it renews me. It fills me back up.
Right.
And so I think games are good because they give us permission to do something that we should be doing anyway, which is play.
Mm-hmm. That makes me think of comedy too, to point to Steph, because she does work in comedy, that, not to be too grand about it, but like things that make us human, right? Yeah. Like comedy, finding meaning in life through play. Like these are very poignant concepts, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
That's pretty cool.
I don't play a lot of video games, but my husband does. And I remember like sitting down, he wanted me to play The Last of Us 2 because we'd watched The Last of Us. First season, and he was like, I don't want you to be spoiled for the second season, so I want you to play through it. And I was like, I don't know how to play video games. Like, I can't do it. And then like learning, like playing the beginning of the game, I never realized that video games teach you how to play them as you do them. I was like, this is such a good lesson for like how to like teach in our classrooms, like how to build failure in and like repetition into our own learning. I don't know, that like it like helped something click in my mind for learning.
And especially related to that, not getting frustrated and quitting within 5 seconds, because that's my experience with a lot of video games. I get mad and like throw the controller. And so especially like for kids, for learning how to deal with failure and how to deal with frustration, that's really important. Yeah. But
also something that the Oregon Trail does really well.
It's awesome. Let's go to games.
Well, let's also plug your panel then. So you are Sunday, 11 a.m., The Politics and Possibilities of Game Time, and your paper, Blink and You'll Miss It, Feeling and Fighting Time in Before Your Eyes. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So John Vanderhoff, my co-author, approached me with this game, which I hadn't heard of. It's called Before Your Eyes. I don't know if anybody's played it. It's the part of what makes it interesting. It's a narrative game. It's a narrative experience. It's about 2 hours long. The interface is the camera, and so it does a pretty good job of tracking your blinks. And so as you're watching a vignette play out, if you blink, it advances the narrative.
Oh wow!
And so you find yourself wanting desperately to have all the narrative information, even as like your eyes are drying out. And it's a story of, I won't give any spoilers. You should check it out. It's a beautiful game. It is also one that if you have someone in your life who's like, video games can't make you cry, you might offer this one as an example.
Okay.
It's about a young boy who's growing up, and you see portions of his life, and then something happens that then makes you reevaluate all the stories that you had up to that point. But it is, it's about memory. It's about loss. It's about our relationship to our own bodies, and a desire to like see something play out, but then also like fighting against your own inability to like, well, just your own human needs, including like the need to blink. And so it's a very simple interface, but just done so masterfully in this particular game. And it gets us also, sort of why we proposed this paper, which is part of a larger special journal issue around time in video games. But it's it gets you to think about, these games are also fun because they can model time in different ways as well.
What a fascinating game. What platforms is it
I
on?
was
Like, where
about
do
to
you
ask
find
that.
Any basic computer with a webcam.
Oh, okay. So so you're saying, the camera's the interface, so that's how it keeps
You can play with a button, but I played with that way, but there's no stakes, right? Like you're not, it's easy just to click forward.
Yeah.
Harder to keep your eyes open.
Yeah. Well, I'm fascinated by that idea of like a physical commitment. So it's not just like a mental one, what we think of when you're trying to stay attentive to a story, but like physically you have to think about your own body. It sounds like the story as well involves notions of thinking about your own body. So, wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, and it's like I said, as I get older, I love shorter games more and more. And a 2-hour-long experience is like, that's totally up my alley. Yes, sign me up.
Right. Anything you're looking forward to the next 4 days?
Looking forward to seeing grad school friends that I haven't seen since last year or the year before. I'm always inspired, always rejuvenated by the conference. It's both like equal parts, like because I think I'm more introvert than extrovert, so it takes a little bit more effort for me. And I'm sure as I'm on the South Shore line headed back to South Bend, I will be completely exhausted.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm looking forward to reconnecting and being reminded of why we do the things we do and why we ask the questions we ask.
Yeah. It's helpful to get that annual reminder, or however often you go to conferences. It's really important and now more than ever, like given the state of the world, feeling like that my paper's about what a TV director does with a comedy, and it's like, who gives a shit, really? But why it is important, and why it's about, and I especially love what you talked about, that notion of it's not so much games, it's play, and why that matters, and thinking about like this director that he and the director he directed a couple of episodes of Freaks and Geeks, which is one of my all-time favorite TV shows. Like that show just means so much to me. That matters. That's important to figure out why people care about these stories, what these stories feed back to us, and the person who directed them and putting the camera there, giving us that message that matters. And so it can be easy to lose a sense of why that matters when the world's on fire. So,
and I think there's probably also an argument to be made for also saying like, I won't let you take that from me, right? Like I know this meant something, but in the before times, it should mean something now. And sort of like planting your flag and saying, no, this is still really important. I will fight other fronts as they have to be, but no, this is still important.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for taking time out. And
that was really
I feel this is perfect to have done this on like before the conference has even started, because I'm all fired up now. All right, we've got one more guest. So AJ Christian will come to the table, and he is professor of communication studies at Northwestern University and director of the Media and Data Equity Lab. So he is a scholar and producer exploring power and media and technology through creative R&D uses media, art, and research and development as a tool for community building, cultural critique, and experimentation. And we have an anniversary happening now. So for 10 years, he's explored how new technologies have transformed the art of storytelling, production, and distribution. And that is through, he co-founded OTV, Open Television, a platform for intersectional television 10 years ago. So congratulations on the 10th anniversary of Open Television. So tell us about Open Television and how it evolved and where's it, at right now?
Well, it's been a journey.
Mhm.
Obviously, 10 years is my entire 30s at this point. But it is now its own kind of app. It's like you can download it on your phone or TV, all your devices. It's a little mini indie Netflix for intersectionality. For me, it came from just a need to kind of get out of my office, honestly. And I was new to Chicago and I wanted community. And so I was connecting with people and I wanted to keep connecting with them. And so I was just like, let's make stuff. And then other people who were already making stuff found me. And so I was like, well, it's not just the stuff I'm making, it's the stuff you're making too. This stuff being beautiful stories. And it just kind of really evolved organically. And it became very much the source of sustenance on tenure track for me, where I could not obsess over the publication because I knew that I was doing the work for like other people as well. And that people were getting meaning out of it beyond just like what I thought about the stories that they were making. But now I don't run it. It's run by Elijah McKinnon, who's my co-founder. 5 years ago, they took over and hired a full-time staff. And so now they just do this. And I just sit on the board and sometimes give advice, but honestly, they don't even really need me that much.
And you get to marvel at this thing that you built.
Yeah, I get to show up to the events. I didn't have to plan them. And I can actually just enjoy myself. So it's really great. But the full story is going to be in my next book, Reparative Media, which will be out in December on MIT Press. So next SCMS, you'll see it on the stands.
Right.
If MIT, do they have a stand here? I don't know.
No.
Maybe not.
They must, right?
Well, let me know and I'll get you a book. Because it really was like a completely all-encompassing experience. Like it just took all my energy and my heart and my mind and my time to do it, but like I wouldn't do it any other way.
Every time I would read about it, I was like, I don't understand how you have time to do this huge other project while also being a professor.
As most things do, it started small and then it just kind of got out of hand. Because, the people I was working with, Black people, queer people, women, trans people, especially in Chicago, like no one was giving them opportunities, resources for connection. And so when they realized that there was this space that not for me, but to like support each other, because I could only give them like max $2,000, and a lot of times it's not even that much, and these things cost more than that. So they ended up like realizing that this was a way for them to co-create their own form of television. And so it just kind of like became a thing that was not what I intended to necessarily become.
Well, that's especially amazing to have an idea and it becomes a thing and then it explodes into something amazing and lasts for 10 years. It's just like this idea of like coming up with a good idea and being able to see it through is relatively rare because it's hard, right? And you run into difficulties of time and you run into obstacles and you run into doubt and people saying like, no one's going to listen, no one's going to watch those shows, right? How did you deal with that along the way? Is it just like having faith in the idea and the creators?
Oh goodness, the doubt. Because every day, like pretty much every day I was like, okay, how do I plan this next thing? And also like, how do I end this project? Because, you're running out of money and you're getting increasingly stressed. So I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I really got very into astrology at this period.
Really?
If I'm going to be honest. Channy Nicholas, queer feminist astrologer. Channy Nicholas counseled me through this. Like, I took all her courses. She asked me questions. I was like processing, and I was honestly like healing through it. Like, when you're dealing with artists who are oftentimes telling very vulnerable stories, like all of their shit comes out, and it brings out all of your shit as well. And I was really processing like childhood trauma through this, like coming into my own as a Black queer person, through other people coming into their own queerness and Blackness and brownness. So I think that's really what kept me going. It's like every time I would be over it, we would like screen someone's work and like they just see that this little story that they made, like it touched someone and people cared, and like that is a drug that will keep you through the hardest times for sure. And I think it's a really important lesson for now. I'm really happy the book is coming out now because, as you were talking about, we need community.
Yeah.
We need these moments of recognition of our little work that we're doing, even if it's just you're writing your academic article on whatever.
Yeah.
You know, just someone saying, "Hey, that actually helped me see the world differently in this small way," is like so gratifying, and it's why we do it. We do this work to connect.
You know, I've always found OTV very inspiring. I've used it in lots of my classes.
Oh
yeah, so a fangirl moment that I love the work that you do. But I feel like I heard you, I don't know when, maybe a panel that you did at one point, but I feel like somebody asked you about like how it contributed to like your like tenure portfolio or something, and you were like, it doesn't, like they don't. Like I feel like you said it was a hard thing to balance.
Yeah, the book has my tenure story in it because it became part of how the project in a weird way sustained itself, but it did threaten my tenure. And so I talk about in the book, it's a bit of a cautionary tale in a lot of ways, like to junior scholars, like, yes, do this work, but do it super strategically and consciously. And like, I was battling a lot of my own demons at that time. I was like really depressed and very much an imposter syndrome. So I was having trouble publishing, and the problem. I was pouring my heart into this work because it was feeding me, and my academic work was like the source of all this anxiety.
Yeah.
And so it, you know, all that to say, it worked out, and it can work out. And I think that's the ultimate lesson of the story. But absolutely, we as a field, as a discipline of just the professoriate, we need to figure out how to value creative and community-based work. Like the work that you're doing on this podcast, the work that you've done through News for TV majors and stuff, like that is intellectually rigorous work, and scholars should be incentivized to do that work. So I don't know, there's some things happening through some other associations that might be releasing tenure standards for this, hopefully in the near future. Because, you know, even in my department, we're recruiting scholars who are like, I want to do community-based work, I want to do creative work. And I think at this time where people are questioning the value of academic work,
it seems like it would be like, this is an advertisement for like what we can do.
We do, right? Like show people what we do it with people outside of academia, and then we can actually build power in society so people fight for higher education.
Right. And I think there's something so important about open television too, the platform it gives to people, like a voice, and as you were saying, like people seeing their stories, and you know, including the notion of independent television as a space for that. It's so important, and you know, it's really inspiring how Open TV has been a trailblazer for that. And I would hope there'd be, you know, others who want to create that kind of model, because I think just that idea of you know, a voice for people who would be marginalized within the normative system of television is just immensely important.
Yeah, and people are doing it. Like, and there were people doing it before me. You know, I mean, obviously, you can go back and back and back, right? There's like long histories of community-based television and scholarship on community-based work around the world. I was really inspired by public access TV and public TV. The show Soul that ran from 1968 to 1973 was like a huge eye-opening moment for me when you think about like interdisciplinary television. Like every episode was like dance, theater, poetry, music, conversation. And like the earliest OTV stuff, we became very known for like scripted comedies and dramas, but the earliest stuff I was collaborating with like performance artists and dancers and like people who wouldn't be asked to make TV shows. Like, what's your TV show, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's really the value of indie TV. And of course, like Issa Rae and Numa Perrier, Black and Sexy TV, and Reverie, the queer TV network, and which is still around and going strong, Quelly TV, Black Indie TV network. So there is this like movement that just is always in us, where we're just like, Hollywood's just, it's exclusive.
Yeah.
And that's part of its allure. But there's always going to be people who are like, but there's got to be more than that.
Yeah.
And thank you for teaching it, because I just think we as media professors, it's our job to kind of give our students these other models, right?
Yeah. And especially the notion of local models, because this is another really important thing in our times of, you know, the entire, you know, journalism industrial complex is broken at this point. And so much we're going to need independent media, local media, and that's the media we can trust, because we are, you know, we interact with people who create it and consume it. And so I think the localism, and I love that you bring up, you know, as a TV historian who loves, you know, preserving local television history, I think that's really important to know what people were able to do with much fewer resources than we have now. And it's really inspiring to know when people care about it, when people want to share a story. It's really important, and to be able to find ways to continue to express that is so important historically and now.
Yeah, I have to shout out Alex Uhas, who wrote AIDS TV and has been producing local television since the 80s in community, in activist ways. I just screened some of her newest films at my house actually before this.
Right,
That's
yes.
why
Thank you
I was
for coming
worried
here
I was
after
not
that.
gonna make it. Yeah, and we're screening it tomorrow again at Northwestern at 6 p.m. Because I think that we've been talking a lot about how in these times there is so much more power, even in a screening of like 10 people, because those are 10 people in your city who you now have a shared point of reference, and so much of what's happening right now is hyperlocal, right? Like literally postdocs and grad students are getting grabbed off the street, and just like the more that we know each other in our spaces, the safer we are. And so community media has never been more important.
Yeah. Well, let's see, your panel, Friday, 11 a.m., centering Black narratives across media and across time, in your paper, How Do Black Lives Matter to Hollywood? Marketing Black Trauma and Joy on Streaming Platforms. So what can you tell us about that?
So this is interesting. It's very much a one-off kind of side project for me. People who know me, I'm just always talking about friggin' community and indie stuff. And I write about Hollywood, but only as like a critique, and then to pivot to indie. But this is a paper that's about Hollywood, which is maybe the only one I will write. It's basically, it came out of this discourse that really got amplified in the pandemic and after, of like creatives in Hollywood, Black creatives in Hollywood, complaining that there's like too much trauma on TV, and how they wanted to sell TV shows and films that were about like Black joy or just everyday or complexity. And so I started to think, I was talking to grad students and I was just like, is that actually true? Is there lots of Black trauma on TV? So we tried to figure out, how do you tackle this question? And we decided to just look at all of the Black Lives Matter playlists that emerged after 2020, which was the way that like these streaming companies turned the largest protest movie in history to like a marketing opportunity.
Like
right?
when you sign into Hulu and it's like
Some of them were like Celebrate Black Stories. Netflix's was Black Lives Matter. I think HBO had like a Juneteenth playlist. And so we just went through the playlist. We cataloged all the shows and films on there. There were like 250 or so of them across most of the major platforms. And we analyzed the trailers, and we just decided like, what's the overall valence of the trailer? Is it mostly focusing on trauma? Is it mostly focusing on joy? Or is it kind of in between, which we called kind of just life? Is it the complexity of life, joy and trauma? And then what we realized, actually my undergraduate research assistant, Kiara Hill, realized that the ones that could not easily be categorized as trauma or joy were either about really, really famous people or everyday people. But there were a lot about really famous people. And like, so the narrative was like, if you were famous, you could have complexity in your story, right? Like you could have the highs and the lows, but there were a lot of trauma stories. I think 40% of the sample were trailers that were just clearly trauma forward, and like that was it. It was like violence of all kinds, domestic, sexual violence, actual violence, police violence, state sanctioned violence, slavery, etc. Which is interesting because when you look at the 90s, Black TV was very joyous, right? It was mostly sitcoms. It was on broadcast TV, right? So you couldn't be too edgy. And the after effect of streaming, where you can tell any kind of story, you lean into the edginess of it, you know? So anyway, we'll talk about all the other codes and what we found on Friday.
Interesting.
That's fascinating work. So we've got the other two. So we'll ask you also, what are you looking forward to coming the next few days?
I'm looking forward to the book expo.
Yeah.
Because I live in Chicago, so I can finally just buy the books and take them home.
That's right. You have to
actually
drag those on a
to
plane.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go crazy in the book expo.
Awesome.
Lots
All
of books
right.
I'm looking forward
That's
to.
great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming out here, and your work is so amazing, and thank you for it.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for continuing to do this podcast. It's an incredible service to the field.
Thank you. Well, that's a really good point to end on because we are just about out of time. And so thank you for the 2 people who joined us live. But we'll cut this together and it'll be an actual episode that like hundreds of people will listen to. And I can't wait to tell people about it. This has been such a really fascinating conversation with all 3 of our guests. So thank you to them. Thank you to Stephanie for stepping in for Michael. Sorry, Michael, you missed a really great episode. And have a good night. And those here at the conference, have an amazing time over the next 4 days in Chicago. All right. And let me end session for all.